Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Alien Protocols, the Advanced Protocols Data Project. So, I wanted to continue our discussion of nano UFOs, and it's a really fun kind of intellectual pursuit, but not fancy. It's not pure fantasy. You can certainly see how our militaries use drones, and our planes even drop drones, so it's not beyond the realm of possibility that these AAVs also utilize drones. So we just explored that premise a little further. The notion that the larger craft have smaller craft inside of them. And we kind of did it by a golden ratio and made some, rough calculations, some raw calculations that, were for fun. And in those calculations, we saw the possibility that one craft could easily accommodate a lot of smaller craft inside of it, only taking up less than 1/4 of its total space. So, less than 1/3. One 375-foot craft could have up to 126 drones in it. Pretty amazing. But if we follow the fractal kind of UFO breakdown, and I'm sure much better mathematicians than I could work out different types of algorithms and using the golden ratio and produce different numbers, but they would be very high numbers like this. And if you think micro drones are a fantasy, then you're really not doing technology justice. Because right now, technology is able to do things like this. This is from an Air Force video. This stuff is in development already. So it's not illogical to assume drones of the smallest size possible. And even certain cases might be explained by drones. Remember this famous case from, I think this was Venezuela or the Chilean Navy. I forget which one it was. I think it's the Chilean Navy. And they studied this for 2 years and they couldn't figure it out. Who knows what the craft was outgassing. So I think we must assume they utilize nano UFOs. And as we spoke about in previous videos on this subject, the closer you would get to Earth, not only would there be more UFOs, they would be more numerous, but they would also have a greater and greater necessity to be invisible or camouflaged the closer you get to the surface of the Earth. So the smallest ones would have to be, you would think, well camouflaged, since they would be most intimately involved with the surface dwellers. So there have been numerous reports of craft emitting tiny little clouds of stuff, whatever it is. And it's interesting to speculate what they might be doing. Of course, we discussed before, they could be doing a whole bunch of things, from construction to research, acquisition, security. They could be very devastating as a weapon, especially if you had every so often different types of nanobots for different purposes. Maybe they could come together and form a larger something, or they could set off a series of explosions one after another and drill through things. Many different possibilities, many different possibilities, only truly limited by creativity. And you would think that almost all UFOs, for protection, would have a bunch of invisible smaller ones around it, scouring the area. As you guys remember with the Nimitz case, Lieutenant Fravor spoke about how on the disturbance in the water, the little tic-tac was doing this, kind of moving around, scanning the area, trying to distract from the bigger, more valuable ship, technically. Maybe with all sightings, there's an invisible other one doing the same thing. And you have to take into account the computing ability and how they have this computing ability. Is it crowdsourced, or does each craft have its own computing ability? And if it's in the cloud somehow, what form of communication are they using? Very important questions. You would think it would be in the cloud somehow, but it's perfectly conceivable that they're able to compress so much data into such a small space, they could cram all the possible protocols for any given situation into the smallest craft. That may be possible as well too. So they might not need communication even. But you can be certain the computing ability would be so fast, so powerful, and that their sensory input and the amount of data that they've already absorbed and are probably currently absorbing is so much data that they would be living in a whole different, almost dimension of speed. They could operate in a whole different dimension of speed. The vastness of their knowledge could be unbelievable. And they might have an ultra ability to acquire sensory data. So it's fascinating. Like, one of the things I was thinking of is how do UFOs shut off these nuclear missiles in these nuclear control rooms that are in shielded areas? How do they do it? First of all, how do they even know that there's nuclear weapons there? Is it from electronic data they've picked up? Is it from future or past information? Is it from a scan where they just pick up the radiation from a passive scan? Is there some sort of mind consciousness connection, like in slide 9 of the Chris Mellon leak? Because the Department of Defense definitely has done studies and has concluded from numerous incidents with the military that there is a mind consciousness connection. How do UFOs even know the nuclear missiles are there to shut them off? It's very interesting. And then the next question is, how do they affect these shielded electronics? Is it some sort of electromagnetic means or physical means? Some waves, consciousness? Do they access the program underneath reality somehow that we just don't understand? But since we've been talking about these nano UFOs, I wanted to explore this one right here, the physical covert activity, and one that I hadn't really thought about too much previously, but now I consider more and more. How they can shut off these craft and different things, and like it says in slide 9, that they do sensor disassembly. You'd have to do something physical to do disassembly. You know, if you just break the encryption and then turn off the weapon system, that's one thing. But to do instantaneous sensor disassembly, that kind of intimates that there's a physical contact somehow. And the nano UFOs would certainly explain that. So if, like what we were saying previously, all UFOs have hidden smaller drones protecting it, if a UFO sees a jet come closer, it could send a whole bunch of those nano UFOs, and they're all integrated into the system and could do whatever the UFO wanted. The same thing with any of these shielded nuclear control rooms. I'm sure they're shielded against electromagnetic waves of all kinds, but probably not shielded down to the nano UFO level. So the nano UFO explains all of these shutdowns. Of course, many of the vehicle shutdowns I definitely think are associated with field propulsion. I think a lot of these cases have very, very strong evidence to indicate that field propulsion shuts them down. But anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think that's a possibility, that nano UFOs are the cause of these shutdowns? Would love to hear your thoughts on what is the physical mechanism that UFOs are using. Much love to you and yours.